Story 1. I had a girlfriend in high school who had a male friend sleep over at her house so they could go skiing early the next morning. It happened a handful of times. They were both on the ski team. He lived an hour away from her house and 2 hours from the ski mountain. They both had boyfriends or girlfriends, so I didn't think much about it. As a matter of fact, usually the four of us would hang out, and then the other girlfriend and I would leave late, so we both assumed it was just a convenience thing. Shortly after this started, she broke up with me, but it was more of a just not the right fit kind of thing. The other couple stayed together, so it didn't really set off my alarm bells. Years afterward, one of my best high school friends, who also happened to be a very close childhood friend with my ex-girlfriend, told me that, apparently, during at least one of those sleepovers, they hooked up. My girlfriend actually really liked me but was really attracted to him. He was one of those absurdly charismatic guys, good at everything he did, and wealthy but down to earth. One thing led to another. The reason he told me was that I was lamenting why she broke up with me. I had a new girlfriend at the time who is now my wife, but it always bugged me why she just kind of left. He wanted me to know that she constantly talked about how bad she felt for doing what she did and considered getting back with me many times. It really hurt knowing the truth, and I'm not sure it made things any better. Years later, my wife, sons, and I were at a Touch a Truck event in the town where we grew up. My ex-girlfriend had moved across the country, so I never expected to see her again, but then I noticed her across the way. She was in town visiting her parents with her husband and their son. So what did I do? I waited until we naturally bumped into each other. I introduced myself to her husband, asked about her son, and introduced her to mine. I called my wife over to chat with her since they were acquaintances back in the day as well. I commented on how happy she and her family seemed, and she said the same about mine. I told her it was really nice seeing her, and we both agreed on how awesome it is that we ended up with such great families. Then we all went on our way. Does it still hurt knowing what I know? Yes, but that was also 15 years ago. People, especially high school kids, make stupid choices. We're both happy now and where we belong, and that's all that matters. Story 2. You never really deal with it. You choose steps moving forward. You make one decision at a time. One day you grow stronger and it means less and less. You continue to deal with it and accept it as part of your journey. Story 3. Caught her cheating, so I sent her screenshots, blocked her everywhere, and requested $27.38 on Venmo for the dinner I paid for the night she was texting him. Petty? Maybe. Therapeutic? Absolutely. Story 4. I left with grace, blocked him on everything, and never looked back. Healing quietly is underrated. You do not need closure when the disrespect was loud enough. Story 5. I stopped talking to her. I didn't expect any closure since a person who behaves that way can offer you nothing valuable, not even a meaningful apology. What has been done is done. I started taking care of myself and emotionally separated myself from her. Story 6. Dealing with it right now. We have been together for almost 23 years, but she became a completely different person last year. It is the worst trauma I have experienced in my life. Every cell in my body wants to run as far away from her as possible. But we have 3 children and a house, so it takes an excruciatingly long time to separate. With children, I will have to deal with her for at least another 13 years until our youngest is 18. Story 7. I kicked her out within 48 hours of finding out and officially divorced her within 4 months. I kept the dog that she begged for. He always liked me better anyway. Story 8. There is a lot of context needed to determine the point in the relationship. If I am with a girl but we are still living separately and I catch her cheating, I will just block her out of my life and move on. If I am in a 5 or 6 year relationship and she cheats, there are going to be more steps I need to take before blocking her out of my life. No matter what, I would remove the person from my life. Story 9. She admitted to cheating in the middle of a fight, so we broke up. Later, she sent me a video of her doing some explicit things with her academic partner to taunt me, I guess. I forwarded the clip to her parents. Their reactions were satisfying. Story 10. Walked away. What do you mean deal with? There is nothing to deal with. If you are not happy, you leave. That is your choice on how to handle it. They were not happy and chose their own way to handle it. There is nothing you can do that will change the fact that they cheated or make them want to be with you now. Nothing is different. The best you can do is let them go on their way, be happy, and move on. Story 11. I found out she was cheating. During an argument earlier in the day, she said something that aroused my suspicion. I do not remember exactly what it was, but it was along the lines of her lying to her friends about me, which triggered a red flag in my mind. We went to bed, but I tossed and turned. Around 2 in the morning, I quietly got up and unlocked her phone. She did not know I knew the pattern, but I had seen her unlock it enough times to know it by now. Right there on her home screen was Tinder. Initially, I thought she might have forgotten to delete the app. I had done so before, so it was possible. I opened Tinder and checked her messages. Sure enough, she had been messaging back and forth with another man. They were planning to meet up again. Apparently, they had slept together when I had taken an emergency trip home. Immediately, I left the apartment to cool down while she was still asleep. A couple of hours later, I returned, walked into the bedroom, turned on the lights, and handed her phone to her with Tinder still open. I asked her to explain. All she could do was start apologizing once she realized what was happening. I told her to start packing and leave. She had family in the area she could stay with, and she had not been living with me long enough to be on the lease. That was Thanksgiving morning of 2017. Story 12. It became easier as we got older, had more money, and online play became more accessible, so nobody could screen peek even if they wanted to. Story 13. Terribly. I was a weak mess, emotionally vulnerable to any kind of affection. I practically manipulated myself into thinking it was not that bad. Story 14. Is the person who cheated a good person? Did they shock you when you found out? Or is this just a sleazy street rat who has cheated before? The two are different, and it matters. More than likely, your partner didn't wake up one day and decide to cheat. Something broke down. If they simply liked the affair partner more than you, they would leave you and be with them. If they stayed with you and had an affair on the side, it probably means they still love you and want to be with you. But they aren't having their needs met and are struggling in the relationship. They got their needs met by someone else, probably not on purpose. I'm not condoning cheating in any way. I'm just explaining how these things happen. If your spouse was a good, loyal, faithful partner, they probably didn't wake up one day and get the fun idea to cheat. It happened slowly over time. It built up on them, and the next thing they knew, they were in too deep. But they don't tell you and they don't leave you. Why? There is a reason they stay and lie. They don't want to lose you. They're secretly hoping and wishing that you'll change and comfort them. But unfortunately, once the affair is exposed, it's the end of the relationship, at least the relationship you once knew. You need to decide what you want. Do you want to work through it? If so, find out what the root cause of the problem is. The cheating is a symptom of the problem. Do you want to leave? Great. Nobody will ever blame you for leaving a cheater. But I still suggest you find out what the problems were in the relationship so you can heal and come out better for your next relationship. Cheating is painful. People make mistakes. Love is amazing. Story 15. Badly, to be honest. I am still hoping we can get over it because my love for her is still there. Has not changed. And I understand why and how it happened. But I am in pain, so I am still dealing with it badly, and I find it difficult to be rational when dealing with my own thoughts on it. Story 16. A lot of the time, they will love bomb you because they are panicking or flip the script and gaslight you. The important thing to remember is to respect yourself first. Regardless of what decisions you make, you need to take some time away from this person for your mental health. When you are clouded by emotion, your judgment and decision-making skills are negatively impacted. When I was young, I could not help but feel that it was because of me that they cheated, like I was to blame or at fault. You need to realize that their actions are not a reflection of your worth. Story 17. 4 years and a child later, she decided to cheat with 2 men. I lost control and did things I regret. The best thing you can do is remember you can only be so angry before the masking wears off. Get therapy, talk to a close friend, or speak to a family member you trust. Importantly, remember suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. So talk to someone if those feelings overwhelm you. Trust me, you are not alone. Story 18. We were engaged and had to resolve our finances and a house we owned together. She was sleeping with her supervisor while we were engaged. I remained completely civil until the paperwork was signed. Then I told her I never wanted to speak to her again. She sent me a Christmas card later that year. I did not open it and returned it to the sender. Years later, I found out she had been sending cards to my family members as well. I never spoke another word to her. That was over 25 years ago. I have been happily married for over 20 years now. We agreed that cheating was unacceptable. If I found out my wife was cheating, I would get divorced. No discussion. Story 19. Forgave her. She did it again. Lesson learned. There is an old saying in Tennessee, I know it is in Texas, probably in Tennessee, that says, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, you cannot get fooled again. Story 20. You don't. You divorce. The trust will never be the same once one person cheats. There will always be suspicion, and resentment will arise at the worst times. Story 21. Any cheating whatsoever and I am gone, blocked on every platform. I would even change my number if I had to. When it comes to any form of cheating, I do not mess around because I would not be able to trust that person ever again. It would lead to arguments and the situation would probably get very messy. Story 22. With my first ex-wife, I tried to move on but couldn't. The ups and downs were depressing. I didn't trust her. I couldn't trust her. Then I did because I could see her, but the phone was always there. I'm not a snooper, which made it harder. Then she got tired of me trying to move on. Eventually, things just faded. It's unfortunate, but in my mind, it's one of those things that happen. It's not that I'm expecting it, but I'm not surprised. However, I can't stop myself from feeling completely crushed because she was able to lie to my face the way she did. That's what hurts me the most. You don't have anything to worry about. I'm in love with you. I threw that back in her face, and we both cried. But if you can't get over it, you're probably better off getting away. Story 23. It is funny because with these questions, the answers are always to cut them out of your life completely. However, the reality is that most relationships continue after infidelity. Most married couples, in particular, stay together. Story 24. Tell their mother. It is a special kind of feeling when a man or person begs you not to tell their mother what they did. Story 25. It is hard, but understanding where they were when it happened is important. Then deciding if you love them and if they are willing to take responsibility. Those of us hurt often only think about our own pain, but sometimes, if you really love someone, you want to understand why something happened. It does not make it right. That is on them to do, but giving them the chance is being the bigger person. Story 26. Put the pictures and the plants in a box and tell them, get to stepping. Fool me once, you are dead to me, point blank, period. Story 27. I realized she was cheating during the breakup. There were many inconsistencies. I gave little to no emotional reaction to her provocations. I moved on with life, improved my mental health, and am doing well overall. I am content with my life. That is the best you can hope for. Story 28. This happened 2 different times that I know of. The first one was a high school girlfriend who just left. I figured that was her decision. The second time was with my first wife during a period when we were far from being on the same page. I took stock of the situation, owned my part in the failure of the marriage, and realized it was long over before the cheating. I think too many men believe they are uncheatable. If that is your mindset, then you are mistaken. Story 29. First and only time I forgave her, but the relationship was already ruined afterward. Trust almost never comes back, and that is the end. I left her about a year later and finally learned a lot about myself. I could not ever trust someone again after something like that. It worked out for the best. Story 30. I knew for a while, but when I found out, I broke it off immediately. I left the apartment and stayed at my mother's for a bit. I thought about it for a couple of weeks, talked to friends, then decided to move out completely and end it. Cheating was a result of a much bigger problem we had in our relationship. I do not regret ending things there. We had a chat after a month to get closure and agreed we were both better off separated. Story 31. Some context. I was a 21-year-old male and she was a 19-year-old female during the pandemic. We were both having a hard time finding employment, so she asked me how I would feel if she got a sugar daddy. Being naive, I said, "If you respect our relationship, you'll draw the line at sex. But you talking to older men for money doesn't bother me." Fast forward 2 months, and she was barely communicating. I had her location and was able to see her get picked up at home and dropped off at various hotels around the city. I ended up leaving the state, and she insisted we continue a closed relationship. When I moved back, she basically shut me out, as all the things she could have talked about were experiences with other men. I tried to commit suicide by experimenting with copious amounts of drugs, but eventually decided that her choices weren't going to influence mine. I've moved across the country and finally feel confident enough to start dating. I feel like my trust will never fully be repaired, but at the same time, it makes me think there's a blind faith to love. I don't know. Summary. Girlfriend wanted a sugar daddy during the pandemic, transitioned into sex work and lied about it, and tried to keep me involved for as long as she could. I moved across the country. Story 32. Hard to say, but I guess the silver lining is that it happened sooner rather than later. Better for it to happen now than years down the line. Story 33. Dropped her. I have self-respect. Dating. While we weren't in a full boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, we both acknowledged it was exclusive and not having sex with others, as was common in the mid-90s due to sexually transmitted disease concerns. I stopped by her place. Her roommate was in the process of moving out on his own. I offered to help. He was a cool guy. We got the bed in his car and he said, "Man, I have been wanting to tell you for a few months." She was a little unpredictable and he didn't want trouble. He revealed the truth. I left her a voicemail telling her to leave me alone. Story 34. I literally died. I resuscitated myself and now I feel like I am dealing with dead people. I have been surrounded by zombies, no joke, so I would not recommend any of this. 0 out of 10. Story 35. Moved on from it. I think we tend to put far too much value on sex, and so anything involving sex is automatically treated as much worse. Trust is obviously a factor, but there are many ways that partners can betray that trust other than cheating. So end it or not and move on. Don't live in it and don't define the relationship by it if you choose to stay. Story 36. In most cases, I did not care because ultimately, in hindsight, the relationships did not matter or were not too serious. In one case, I forgave her because she confessed to me when there was no way I could have found out, and she was genuinely shocked it happened. It was just kissing, and it also happened the first time she had alcohol at her new college. The breakup still happened not long after when she realized her heart was not into it as much as mine, and she preferred honesty over potentially cheating and hurting me. In the case that genuinely hurt, I was not bothered by her sleeping with someone else. It was the dishonesty that hurt most. Lies by omission are still lies. I think I just let it hit me for the most part. Story 37. I stayed with her the first time, and then a year later she did it again. She stopped talking for 2 weeks. I got back with her again, but she was already with another man while getting back with me. During this time, she told me how she would leave him eventually and move in with me. At the beginning of this year, I finally broke it off and blocked her. Story 38. You shut it down and walk away. It hurts. It is supposed to hurt, but a person who cheats does not get a second chance. Story 39. Broke up with them. If they cheat, that is enough to end a relationship. It does not matter if there were issues in the relationship that led them to cheat, because if they never felt comfortable enough to discuss the issues in the first place, then the relationship was not stable enough to begin with. Most issues that lead to cheating can be worked on or at least explored to find alternative solutions. Someone not communicating or willing to make an effort to communicate at all is not. Story 40. You just move on, and that is life. However, not everyone is dishonest, so do not give up hope of finding a loyal person. Story 41. Moving on with her despite the intimate part of the relationship being destroyed forever. It will never be the same. Story 42. Stay with them. Wait a few years. Make amends. develop a deeper understanding of each other's pain, and fall in love all over again. Story 43. I'm not really good enough to tell when someone is cheating. When we begin, it is usually pretty even, but if they start doing things in the middle that I don't understand, then I know the endgame is going to be very unfair to me. But I am only a 600 ELO. Story 44. You accept it happened and then decide if you can move forward in the relationship or if the trust is too broken for you to do that. I am in the latter group, and while it is difficult to leave when there is still love, I just could not look at him the same way. Life is much better now. Story 45. Leaving is really the only option, as hard as it is to absorb. Read Leave a Cheater. Gain a Life for motivation. After you work through the logistics of separating and explore the why questions, it is a matter of developing your sense of self again. Be compassionate to yourself. This will be painful, but there are no shortcuts. Story 46. I spent years trying to convince myself that I would trust him again. Couldn't. Looking back, I wish I had just blocked him and left then and there, never to look back. Story 47. Usually, I backed out of the lobby and joined another one, which usually fixed the issue until the next time I encountered someone. Sometimes I stayed because it was fun being in a lobby like that. Story 48. Someone else's poor decision does not change who I am or devalue me in any way. I repeated that to myself for months and got through it. Story 49. Sadly, I have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I have been cheated on many times, but being sad does not release dopamine, so I move on quickly to the next dopamine. Story 50. I sensed it while she was talking to the guy because she was getting quite distant and told me that she wanted a break to meditate or whatever. I confronted her and broke up right there. My cheating policy will never change. Send the cheater packing immediately. They should not exist to you anymore. I would have gone full no contact, but I had some respect for her parents, so I took care to visit and see them one last time. Then I went full no contact. I am currently with a girl who is both more beautiful and more adventurous. Always send the cheater packing immediately and completely erase them from your life. They should be as good as having never existed from that moment on. Then go find better people until you find a better partner. Story 51. I have been cheated on 3 times and broke up with all 3 partners. Why stay in a relationship with someone who clearly does not want to be in a relationship? Story 52. I found out on my own, made it easier to do, then made my own excuse to leave. I would rather not put someone down, just exit with grace. Story 53. I do not. I throw that person away without explanation, and then I take care of myself so I do not blame myself for their mistake. As a bonus, I make sure they see my success. Story 54. If you double-click the report button very quickly, you can report people twice. Sometimes, with a very precise drag click, you can get 3 reports. There are way too many cheaters in Counter-Strike 2. Story 55. It broke my heart. Lots of crying and conversations with him and trusted girlfriends of mine. I read many self-help books and attended therapy. He wanted to marry me. I didn't know if I should work through this with him or walk away. After 4 difficult months, I decided to walk away for several reasons. Looking back, I know I made the right decision and have no regrets. Story 56. When I found out my long-distance ex was cheating on me, he had moved across the country. I really wanted to play nonchalant. I was supposed to go see him in a month. My plan was to romance him, spoil him, make him feel heard and loved. Then, after that week, I would ghost him, no word from me. But I lost control. I called his mom and even his grandpa. Story 57. Learn from my mistake. She cheated on me a few days after the season started and told me about it. I was a fool who thought she deserved another chance. I know I am an idiot. She left. So do not deal with cheaters. Forget them. I might throw her stuff out, we will see. Just hold your head up and move forward. Story 58. I was the one cheating. They never caught me. It is the only reason I got an A in that subject, thanks to coronavirus disease 2019. Story 59. Time heals everything. It sucks that it happened, but you move on and find better people to date. You start to value people with integrity and count your blessings. Story 60. Before I cheated in a university exam, I went to a student black market to buy past exams because our professor was difficult and never gave us one to practice with. I studied that paper for 8 hours straight, memorizing everything in it. The best part was that the exam was exactly the same word for word, only the year changed. I finished the 3-hour exam in 45 minutes and pretended to think until time was up to avoid suspicion. I got 95%. Story 61. I have been cheated on 3 times in the last 20 years. A 3-year relationship, a 14-year relationship, and a 2-year relationship. It never gets any easier to tolerate, but the alternative is being alone, so you just put yourself out there and try again. Story 62. After 6 months of no contact, we reconciled. The verbiage we used is that we are moving forward, not moving on. We are not forgiving and forgetting, or brushing it under the rug, or calling it water under the bridge. It was a major event in our relationship that we are choosing to take with us and learn from as it becomes part of the past. That choice led to one of the biggest periods of personal growth I have ever had. Infidelity is often portrayed as a black and white issue, but the reality is that it is more often than not incredibly complicated and difficult. Please remember that if you, as the victim, want to make the decision to forgive, that is entirely your choice. You do not ever have to choose forgiveness. I did, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made, but that is not advice that should be universally followed. Story 63. I'm going through it now. I really want to forgive and forget, but it's not easy. It will be messy if we do split, but it's looking that way. Self-respect is everything, and I feel like a total fool right now. I won't go into too many details, but I've given this relationship literally everything. I'll be left with nothing. Story 64. I stopped trying to prevent it. I know that sounds crazy, but here it is. I stopped trying to actively keep my partners from cheating and instead accepted the fact that if they cheat, it's over and I move on. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I walked away from several relationships that way. I had to accept that their cheating really had nothing to do with me and was their own issue to work through. I also had to learn to love myself first, which is harder than it sounds. Anyway, I'm very happy with my current significant other and very secure that he would never cheat. I think keeping that attitude brought me to him, because once you stop playing the game, players stop playing you. Story 65. I mostly play offline or only with friends, so it is never really an issue for me. However, if I were to go online, I would likely report it only if I were completely sure they were cheating. Story 66. I ended the relationship with her and then was intimate with her roommate, who genuinely liked me and wanted to be with me. Story 67. Just out of curiosity, do you think there are degrees of cheating that have different outcomes? How would you rank? A. Cheating with one of your mutual friends or family. B1. A passionate relationship with a coworker or a friend your partner barely knows. B2. That, but without sex, like platonic cheating. C. A sex-only arrangement with a mutual stranger, for example, through a dating app. D. A drunken one-night fling. ED, but with a sex worker, for example, at a bachelor party or a Las Vegas-style party night. F. A regular habit of visiting sex workers. G. Neglecting the relationship but being addicted to pornography. H. Secretly reaching out and reconnecting with your ex. Please let me know how you would rate this spectrum. Feel free to add your own scenarios and where they would fit on the scale. Story 68. He cheated, then took me back. He found out and forgave me. We broke up because he cheated again. It took me a long time to forgive and even longer to forget. Story 69. I found out she stayed the night with her ex-boyfriend of 6 years. She and I got together shortly after they broke up. She told me she just missed her dogs and wanted to see them. I was naive and took her word for it. My trust was destroyed, and I began to always wonder if she was actually where she said she was going. Our relationship only lasted a couple of months after that. Story 70. He admitted to it during a psychosis episode. I stayed for a year and a half until he was fully better. Then I left because I had set the betrayal aside for so long, and I just could not anymore. I let it go and moved on. Story 71. The key here is to be confident and avoid attracting attention from a teacher or professor. Just casually glance over prepared notes. You can also use small earpieces and artificial intelligence tools. There are many new ways of cheating nowadays. Story 72. I know some people decide to fix things, but to me trust is broken. Without trust, there is really nothing but heartache. To me, that is the end of things. Story 73. You will never recover completely. It makes you lose your belief in the innocence of what love is. How to trust someone ever again afterward becomes a choice. Story 74. Depends. When it was little flings here and there with people, I didn't really do anything. As long as I wasn't being rejected, I wasn't too worried about what she was doing. When it was a whole relationship, I had a discussion with her about it. She was feeling lonely because I was working 12 to 16-hour days starting a company, and we had just moved to a new city where she didn't know anyone. She agreed to end the relationship, and I agreed to spend less time at work. I ended the relationship later due to her drug use. We had a child together, and I didn't want him around that. The drug use was always a bigger deal to me than the cheating. I could deal with her popping pills before my son was born, but once he was in the picture, that became the deal breaker. Story 75. I was lucky that the girlfriends who cheated on me did so only short-term, allowing me to make a clean break without any real issues. One girlfriend, upset that I couldn't leave work in the middle of the day to hang out with her, tried to upset me by showing up at the bar and restaurant where we were supposed to meet with another man. When she went to use the restroom, I calmly explained the situation to him, since there was no reason to be upset with him, only with her. He had no idea as they had just met. He thanked me for letting him know, and I invited him to join us for a couple of beers, which he did. My now ex came out of the bathroom, saw my best friend, the man she brought, and me all hanging out drinking beers and immediately left. It was satisfying for everyone except her. She was going through a lot at the time, but it was not an excuse for her behavior. Thankfully, she got the help she needed after our breakup. Many years passed, and we remained cordial. She was actually the one who set me up with the woman who would become my wife. My wife and I just celebrated our 11th wedding anniversary last Friday. It's all thanks to the ex who tried to cheat on me but failed. Story 76. I got all of my anger out by yelling and scolding. We were engaged when he confessed, then wanted me to forgive him, and then confessed again for doing it again. So I told his mother. I kind of regret it. Story 77. She became a mentally destructive bully during the final year of our relationship. There was a lot of crying after the breakup, but to be honest, watching her social downfall has been remarkable. Hearing from many people about her losing friends because everyone is tired of her behavior is almost poetic and makes me somewhat grateful that she cheated, as that too has ruined her reputation significantly. Her woe is me attitude apparently turned many mutual friends away, and it is amusing to know she is slowly becoming more and more alone in life. In short, I continued living my life and things worked out. Story 78. Found out my ex-wife was cheating. I forgave her and asked her to go to couples therapy. I said that in a lifetime together, this would be a small obstacle we would look back on and laugh about when we are old. She said she would rather be single and party. A few months later, when the divorce papers were about to be finalized, she said she realized she made a mistake and asked if it was too late to cancel the divorce. I told her yes, that she had her chance. I got remarried, and we are expecting our second child in October. Cheating was the best thing that ever happened to me. Story 79. Just walked away. No yelling, no asking why, nothing. I calmly told her never to contact me again. As I did not trust her to do this, I took additional steps to close any potential lines of communication. Cheaters do not deserve second chances, and their feelings should not be considered when addressing their choices. Put them back on the street corner where you found them, and move on with your life. Do not let them know how badly they hurt you. If you need to grieve, and you will if they matter to you, make sure to do it privately. Leave them to wonder how you could check out so quickly and easily. It will really confuse them. Story 80. I packed her bags and locked all the doors while her belongings stayed in the garage as she arrived from her unfaithful outing. Story 81. Honestly, we talked things out. We identified where things went wrong and what led to it, and figured out how to fix those issues. Took years to heal, but we made it through the other side stronger and learned a lot about ourselves, each other, and our relationship along the way. We are still together and have been for almost 20 years. We are happier now than we have ever been. Before anyone jumps to conclusions, we were both guilty. This was not a one-sided issue. Story 82. I got hooked on drugs and alcohol and eventually became sober and moved on. I'm still not sure how, but I just woke up one day and decided to get clean and move forward so easily. Story 83. At first, I lied to myself and denied it for a long time. I even made myself believe it did not happen until they said, "Hey, let's get married." And I said, "Hey, I'm going to hear the truth." Yeah, that was a mistake, but in the long run, I learned a lot. In the end, I used a lot of drugs, smoked a lot of marijuana, and drank alcohol all day long. Took a while to get back to normal. Story 84. I told myself I would never accept cheating after my father cheated on me. Then my wife cheated on me with my best friend while I was overnight in surgery. I tried to keep it together because we had children. She only got worse, insisted it was not really cheating, and basically dealt with a host of untreated mental illnesses until the marriage fell apart. It took months of therapy before I was willing to believe I was not the horrible abuser she insisted I was, and longer still to believe that I was actually trapped with an abuser for nearly 20 years. It has taken a few years, but I am happy for the first time in decades. I have a partner who actually cares about me, and the difference is night and day. I take better care of the children, and my house is a place I can call home. My life is immeasurably better. In fact, the biggest issue I still deal with is having to interact with her as a parent. She is as unstable as ever, continually making wild life decisions and not telling me, like moving 60 miles away unexpectedly, or trying to take the children away, but without the courts because she does not have a case and I do. Honestly, I am back to my old ways. If someone cheats, the trust is shattered, and I should believe who they show they are. Story 85. She was begging to have a talk after I found out. I told her, I am confident, not submissive, and walked out like Tony Stark. 3 years later, it still feels good. Story 86. Ended the relationship. However, I still regret not taking decisive action against the individuals involved, as they spread their own lies. Story 87. Cried and moved out. Agonized and burned with rage for several months. Then I forgave her. Not to her face. I only needed myself to know I forgave her, that I stopped making myself suffer. She doesn't need to know, and it has been 18 years since then. Perhaps that secret is my vengeance. I don't think about you anymore. Story 88. Accepted it, ended the relationship, and moved on. If you dislike something someone did, never seek revenge, especially in relationships. Be the wise one. Story 89. In the 1990s, I had my girlfriend living with me at my apartment. One day, while cleaning, I noticed she threw away a handwritten letter in the trash that she apparently meant to send to another man she was cheating on me with. I spent the next hour packing her clothes and other belongings into boxes and left them outside the apartment in the shared hallway. I taped the note on the door and changed the lock back to the original one that came with the apartment. I never heard from her again. Luckily, she got the hint and did not cause a scene. Story 90. The only way to deal with it is to leave it in the past and move on. Some people make it work about as likely as most people becoming actors to be like George Clooney. There is a chance, but it is very slim. Story 91. First, I thanked myself for pushing for the prenuptial agreement to be signed. Second, while she was gone, I packed up her belongings and left them outside. Third, I changed the locks to the house. Fourth, I called her parents, family, and friends to inform them of what happened. Her family loved me and was absolutely devastated. Her parents did not let her come home. She left with nothing except her bags and ended up staying with a friend. I have no idea where she is now, but she is out of my life, and I am much happier. Story 92. Have some self-respect and move on. Remind yourself that he humiliated you and move on. Remind yourself that you are too good to be cheated on and move on. Story 93. 4 years of therapy. Edit. Also, a lot of learning by doing, especially by making mistakes. I was jealous and controlling in my next relationship. I was a terrible person. I was in 3 relationships after I was cheated on, and each one got better. They were short and I hurt my ex-girlfriends, but now I am really secure. My advice: do not jump into a new relationship. Accept that it hurts and learn to deal with it. Also, realize that not everybody is a cheater. Just because your ex did does not mean the next one will. Story 94. Poorly. I allowed her to convince me it happened due to a manic episode. She had been diagnosed with bipolar 1 as well as borderline personality disorder separately. I agreed to work it out through couples counseling since we had been together for close to a decade, have a daughter together, and were engaged. Counseling helped, or at least seemed to, and things got better. I was starting to trust her again. Then one day, I got a call from her while I was at work, confessing to cheating on me again. She only told me because she thought she might be pregnant and her mother told her, "You tell him or I will." The first time hurt me a lot. The second time completely crushed me. This man was coming over to my house to see her while I was at work and our daughter was napping in her room. It made me sick to my stomach. By this point, I was completely broken and a shell of a man. So when it turned out she wasn't pregnant, I allowed her again to talk me into fixing it for our daughter's sake. She promised to get treatment for her mental illness. We were still in counseling and our therapist held her accountable, which was at least a small comfort. I was dead inside from that point forward and practically consigned myself to living this life with a person who constantly criticized me, lashed out at me simply for being the nearest person whenever something went wrong for her, and worst of all, cheated on me. Some time later, she broke up with me. Though I cannot fully blame her for that, I was probably miserable to be around. I found out she was leaving me for another man, which only lasted about 2 weeks. About a month later, she asked if we could try again, and I finally said no. The worst part of splitting up is not seeing my daughter every day. But overall, I am much happier now. We maintain an amiable relationship and co-parent my daughter well, but I do not know if I will ever date anyone again. It is embarrassing to admit I allowed this to happen to me. I genuinely believed it was due to her mental illness until I asked about it in a support group for partners of people with bipolar and borderline personality disorder, which I had been a longtime member of. They pretty much unanimously told me she was just using it as an excuse, which made sense once I was outside of the situation and looking back at it. I thought I was being supportive and doing the right thing by standing by her as she struggled with mental illness. I even read books on how to be more supportive as her partner. I was an idiot. I have been single for 3 years now, and I do not know if I will ever put myself back out there. If I ever do, I will have zero tolerance for that behavior like I always used to. I never thought I would go against my own instincts to give the benefit of the doubt to someone who betrayed me like that. It is shameful. Story 95. Unfortunately, you end it. Hit the gym, read a book, take long walks, find a new hobby. It is time to level yourself up. Statistically, once a cheater, always a cheater. Story 96. I never really caught her cheating, but since I worked nights across town and she would go to her brother's house, I think I need to clarify. A 19-year-old girl going over to her dad's 29-year-old friend's house to stay the night. I'm not saying she was cheating, but she was, I also found PlayStation 4 messages where she was talking to another guy about what she was doing each night. One message mentioned her making plans with her dad's friend, then a few more about planning to do it again, but there were never any explicit details or steamy messages. I was never allowed to touch her phone. I wasn't even allowed to look at it without her blowing up. Long story short, once I caught wind of it, I didn't know what to do. I made triple what this guy looked like in movies at that point in my life, so money wasn't the issue. She had everything she wanted. I wasn't the best partner, but I tried. I tried to talk, not yell. I was always willing to help her with anything. I supported her when her mom died. I was one of the 2 people who found her. I never got along with her mom. She was, in all honest terms, too nosy and rude for her own good. The type of person who thinks they get to boss people around with no harm to come from it. She once told me I was in the wrong for telling my ex to stop talking ill about my family. My parents were in the wrong, but that was my place to tell them, not hers or her family's. So in the end, I simply left. I drove 9 hours home to my parents' house, got a new phone, got rid of my Tahoe, quit my job, and deleted all social media except Reddit. I didn't handle it well, to be honest. I just shifted into a quiet, somber lifestyle that suits me. I quit on myself. Story 97. I called them out, ended the relationship, and then dealt with the pain. I leaned on friends a lot. I think the healthiest thing I did was decide that I would not let this affect any future relationships. I would not allow someone who is untrustworthy enough to cheat to impact my future relationships. Story 98. I dealt with it first by falling into a pretty terrible depression and isolating myself from everyone I cared about. Over time, I learned that it was never my fault. I never deserved it. I was always good enough, and her bad actions do not reflect on me whatsoever. Sometimes people make mistakes on their own, and it has nothing to do with you. They would have done the same thing no matter what. The only thing it means is that person is not good for you, and you deserve better. Story 99. A lot of anger, alcohol, and good old friends led me into destructive behavior. Then one day it faded, and I stopped doing these things out of anger. Now I do them for happiness. Story 100. I was the military wife who was cheated on when he was over in Afghanistan with a female medic. I was furious that he made me into a stereotype and pretty much destroyed our daughter's world at that time. I'd like to say I handled it well, but that would be lying. I lost my temper for a bit. We stayed together for 5 months to see if we could work past it. I remember taking laundry out of the dryer and cutting the crotch out of his boxer briefs and the toes off his socks, folding them and putting them back in his drawer. Another time, I was washing his collection of drinking glasses and decided instead to smash them into pieces. Neither action was practical, but they made me feel better, at least for the moment. Needless to say, we could not work it out and ended up getting divorced. Both of us are much happier for it. Takes time to trust others and yourself again, though. Story 101. I cried a lot and then eventually moved on. It was hard, but the longer it has been, the less it hurts. I have been in a relationship for 5 years with someone I trust and do not really think about it as much. When I do, it does not really hurt anymore. Story 102. I made the mistake of letting it go. She told me about 2 of the incidents and implied there were other men involved. I should have ended things then and there because it never stopped. She started doing to me what she had admitted doing to other men. She effectively made me apologize for getting upset about it. She was sleeping with another man on my birthday. She didn't reach out for another week, and all of our friends knew. About a month later, she came down. Suddenly, my engagement ring was gone, replaced with another. She pawned it to buy his. She found something to be mad about and quietly fumed at me for the entire week. In fact, she was already pregnant with his child. Then she flew off to be with her current husband, where his parents gave them wedding gifts. We officially broke up 2 weeks later. They bragged about having sex on my social media, and I remained friends out of pressure from our mutual friends to do the right thing. She later admitted she had been using me to get a house and a new car. I eventually blocked her, but the worst part of me genuinely believed that deep down she cared and was honest. Instead, she left me $300 in debt, starving and so depressed that I left my home state 6 months later for the other side of the country. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.